Jaxson Dart is now starting for the New York Giants. All this coming on a surprise day as he gets ready to open up his career against the Chargers. Is this the right decision? Are the Giants rushing him? And who is making this decision? All this and more coming up on Rich Sports Talk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest in New York sports. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that like button as well so we can get more great football fans in here as well. If you can't join us during the live stream, you can always check us out wherever podcasts are available. And, of course, join us during our live stream so you can drop in your comments, super chat to jump to the front of the line and to make a donation to the channel. It is official. The Giants' future begins today as Jaxson Dart will start against the Chargers. Giants 0-3 start. Russell Wilson has been pulled, and I have a lot of thoughts on this decision. Why was the move made now? Is this the right decision for the Giants? Are they rushing Jaxson Dart? Let me go back to the beginning. When I saw that the Giants were going to draft Jaxson Dart on night one, again, I wasn't surprised, especially when he was falling in the first round. My big thought when I came on the air and I said this was, the big thing with Jaxson Dart is I like a lot of the tools he has. I like the build he has. I like a lot of the projection that he can bring to an NFL locker room. The thing, though, that I always went back to was, and especially with the quarterback class of 2025, was they need to sit and develop. They need to sit and develop. And personally, I thought in theory what the Giants had was smart. You had Russell Wilson, you had Jameis Winston as a bridge in front of him, much like Kurt Warner was the bridge to Eli Manning in his rookie year. The concern I had with Jaxson Dart was this. Jaxson Dart, to me, was the emergency ripcord for this regime of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Because the big thing that Giant fans would say and defend Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen is, well, they never have had their own quarterback. They didn't get the chance to draft and develop their own quarterback. They were saddled with Daniel Jones. So they got the opportunity, and they drafted him. And my big worry at the time, and I've said this, was that the Giants were going to rush him before he was ready because he is the saving grace for this organization. And really, he is the last line of defense for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen to keep their jobs. We all know John Mara is not happy with the state of the Giants. We understand that he wasn't happy at the end of last year. But the big thing that this regime has to show now is that Jaxson Dart is the franchise quarterback. And what is adding to this pressure, and I do think that this cannot be understated, is how Daniel Jones is doing in Indianapolis. Because John Mara is seeing that Daniel Jones, the former quarterback they had, is 3-0. We see the discussions that Daniel Jones could potentially be an MVP candidate. And I got to wonder if John Mara is looking at this coaching staff and going, we had this guy in our building and he's doing this with someone else. Can you get Jaxson Dart to the right place? And with Jaxson Dart, this really isn't about wins and losses now. It's about the end of the season. The way that this regime and this coaching staff keep their jobs is very simple. In week 18, if I am saying that Jaxson Dart looks like a franchise quarterback, they have kept their jobs. If I have to ponder and wonder if he's a franchise quarterback, they are gone. Because they have had opportunity after opportunity. And if Jaxson Dart isn't working out and they've invested this draft capital in him, they moved on Daniel Jones for him, then I think you're going to see a whole new regime. And I think a lot of this comes from what's happened in the last couple of days. The Giants go on prime time against Kansas City. They lose in prime time. Russell Wilson doesn't look good in prime time. And you hear the fans chanting for Jaxson Dart. So look, I'm hoping Jaxson Dart plays well. The big thing is you need him to be safe. My biggest concerns with Dart are this. Number one, is he ready to play? And again, I know he looked great in the preseason, but is he ready to play? But my bigger concern with Dart, and I've said this the last couple of weeks, isn't that I don't trust Dart. I don't trust this offensive line. I don't trust this offensive line that has been going through cycles. You have Andrew Thomas playing 25 snaps the last game and then coming out. I don't love the offensive line in front of him. And if this offensive line cannot hold, then this is a big problem, because I've seen it so many times when young quarterbacks get hit and get the tar being out of them that unfortunately they lose confidence in their ability and they get gung shy. So I am worried that this offensive line is not good enough in front of Jaxson Dart. And my big thing, and I was talking to Wix Picks about this the other day as we did our Giants Week 3 recap, was I'm not putting Dart out there until I feel this offensive line is more settled. But of course, they have made this decision. Which leads me to my next point. And again, comment your thoughts on the decision of Jaxson Dart. I was wondering of this decision is, I have a question about this decision. I think it is very important. Who is ultimately making this decision? And I do think it has levity. Because is John Mara strongly suggesting this decision, or is Brian Daboll? If this was Brian Daboll's decision, full out, then that's fine. But if Brian Daboll is acquiescing to the owner, and again, that could easily be the case. John Mara, I don't think is confident in this staff. And it reminds me a lot of Woody Johnson last year with Robert Saleh. Like, you get to a point where you don't trust your staff and you feel like you have to make them make decisions. Never forget, we have seen this franchise on a HBO show tell this owner that they don't worry about, that they were going to get Saquon Barkley back, or they weren't going to overpay for him, or that eventually we'll be fine without him. And we saw what Saquon did last year. I think that that decision has put a target on the back of Joe Schoen. I think that it has basically broken a lot of trust between Mara and the staff, and this is really their last shot. And I'm getting the grumblings that maybe this decision was made because John Mara might be saying, look, I got to see what Jaxson Dart is, because I'm seeing the former quarterback who my franchise invested a 6 overall pick, my former quarterback that's been the only quarterback in the last decade to win us a playoff game outside of Eli Manning, and the quarterback that we tried to build around for years is now off in another place having great success. When you looked at the two pillars of that playoff run, it was Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, who are both no longer here, but are both thriving in different locations. The other thing, too, is I feel the Giants mishandled this back in the preseason. I feel the Giants could have elongated and given a longer rope to Jaxson Dart. Now, look, I think Jaxson Dart played great in the preseason. His stock was amazing. He really lived up to the part, and I'm not trying to poo-poo anything Jaxson Dart did in the preseason. But the second that the Giants announced that he was going to be the number 2 quarterback on the depth chart, I kind of had to roll my eyes, because I'm like, this is not going to be good. Because if Russell Wilson, which again, at the end of last season looked like he was cooked, looks cooked early, you know they're going to want to see Jaxson Dart. I felt that this was a very easy decision for Brian Daboll, and it didn't have to be complicated. It could have been this simple. Our starting depth chart for 2025 is Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, number 2. And if people said, well, what about Jaxson Dart? Didn't he play well enough? All Brian Daboll had to do was this. He could go to the press conference and say, look, Jaxson Dart has really impressed me this training camp. Jaxson Dart is really picking up his game. We love the way he's fitting into our system. We love the way he is developing. We made this decision because we wanted to go with the 2 quarterbacks who have the most NFL experience on this roster. Jameis Winston is a capable backup to start this season. He has shown that he can play at a high level in this league. And if they made a decision to move off of Russell Wilson and go to Jameis, then that would mean Jaxson Dart moves up the depth chart. I felt that Jameis Winston could have been a really nice buffer for at least another week or two so that Jaxson Dart didn't have to get thrown into the fire, but now he is being thrown into the fire. And I would also say this. If you are the Giants, I would be looking to shop one of your 2 QBs, because I do think that Russell Wilson, I don't think has a market. I think Jameis Winston could bring you a piece back. Could you get another wide receiver, another tight end, another piece to help Jaxson Dart develop? Because I look at Jameis Winston and I look around this league, how many teams are already on backup quarterbacks? You don't think that if you called the Bengals would entertain it, especially with the way Joe Burrow is and how they got shellacked last week by the Vikings? To me, they have two assets that they can move off of, which especially I think the biggest one is Jameis Winston. But again, comment in the comment section below if you're joining us in the live stream. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on the podcast, thank you for listening to us, as we always appreciate the support here on Rich Sports Talk. So my thought was I felt that they should have gone with Winston at number 2 to start the season. They went with Dart. And the other thing that I think expedited this was the Dart teases, where they did that sub packages with him running. Because you are teasing this fan base that you have this quarterback that people want to see and you're not throwing him out there. And I was against those Dart packages because you saw it in the Chiefs game. Crowd gets excited when Dart comes into the game. This could be the moment he sticks, and then he's back out and they're booing Russell Wilson when he's going back to the huddle. It reminded me so much of the Mark Sanchez, Tim Tebow situation, where Tebow was so beloved that the second that Mark Sanchez struggled, everyone wanted Tim Tebow. It's the same thing with Russell Wilson. You knew Russell Wilson was going to have struggles because that's who he's been the last couple of seasons. And when that happens, there's going to be the thought to go to Jaxson Dart. But the decision has been made. Do I think it's the right one? Personally, I think it's a bit rushed. I would have tried to bring him in the Saints game. I think give him another week. I think that's a lighter landing spot than against a 3-0 Chargers team at home, and especially against Jim Harbaugh, great defense with the Chargers. But this is an even 14 games. This Giants season and this regime have 14 games. And it's not about the wins and losses as much as fans hate that saying. And I get it. Giant fans want to win. But the next 14 games are going to be crucial to this future of this franchise. And I will get into that in a second as we get to some of your comments. Tony Alexio, it's a shame the Jets didn't sign Winston instead of Fields. Well, I do think that Winston was an intriguing option there, Tony. I think that they like Fields with the upside because you know what you get with Winston. I think Fields, there still was a bit of you didn't know what you were getting. But again, Tony Alexio, always great comments as always. Again, make sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment. So the next 14 weeks are going to be crucial for the New York Giants. And I'm going to say it this way because it is true. So much can happen in the next 14 weeks. And depending on what happens, you can have a various different outcomes. And Tony, I agree with you. Dart will give the Giants more hope to win. Again, I think it adds a spark. I think it makes the receivers and the offensive linemen try to raise their game. They know it's a young kid in there. I hope it gives them a spark. I hope it gives them that spark that they need, especially because they just feel like they are dead in the water. Here's my thoughts on this 14 games coming up. This is going to be a brutal stretch. There's no sugarcoating. The Giants, in terms of scheduling, got screwed this year. They have one of the hardest schedules, if not the hardest in the league. Like I said earlier in this show, this season isn't about the wins and losses. It's by the week 18. Am I sitting here saying Jaxson Dart looks like a franchise quarterback? Because if he does, that means the following. That means Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are likely keeping their jobs. That means that there's not another offseason of turmoil. That means that this team doesn't have to entertain looking at the NFL draft next year, and they can look to fill out the rest of this roster. But if we get to the end of the season and it's a lot of maybe, well, Dart has shown flashes, but we're not sure. Well, Dart has shown the ability to make some big plays, but he's made a lot of killer interceptions or bad decisions out there. Or if he gets hurt, God forbid, behind this offensive line, if he has to miss time, well, can he stay healthy? We're not sure. Can he perform behind this offensive line? We're not sure. There's a lot of questions that then come up because the hardest thing that the Giants are looking at for this fan base is the Giants have been in this situation before where you had a rookie quarterback and then you got a new head coach for year 2. That is a very difficult transition to make, because not only is it tough to learn an offense and get familiar with an offense the first year, but then having a hard reset and having to relearn everything with a whole new coach. And then that's not even the issues of, let's play the hypothetical and Dart plays okay, but not well enough to save Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's job. Then you get into some interesting problems this offseason. It comes down to the head coach. Now, will you make it that the head coach has to work with Jaxson Dart? If you do, does that shrink the pool of eligible candidates? Is it you will let the coach do whatever he wants at the quarterback position? If the Giants are a top 5 pick and they like a better quarterback than Jaxson Dart, do they go with that quarterback and then try to sell Jaxson Dart to another team? The big thing for the Giants is the next 14 weeks with Jaxson Dart. It's not about wins and losses. It's about having clarity for your future. If you get to the end of this season and the picture is clear that Jaxson Dart works, this franchise will be nice and settled heading into 2026 and in a good situation to take a big step forward. However, if there is a big stumble along these next 14 weeks, if there's an injury along these next 14 weeks, if this staff does not put Jaxson Dart into a position, then it just muddies everything around this franchise once again. And the big thing is you have to develop the quarterbacks correctly. I'm a proponent of they should sit on the bench, that they should learn behind a veteran. And to their credit, he has learned for the first 3 games. But now there's going to be a lot of pressure on Jaxson Dart. And for every person, and again, I'm wishing for the best. I hope Jaxson Dart plays well. I hope Jaxson Dart really shines for the Giants. But if every Giant fan is looking at him to be the savior for this season, that he is going to turn around and take this team on a magic carpet ride to the playoffs, I would be very doubtful. Only 2% of teams in NFL history who have started 0-3 have made the playoffs. And when you look at the Giants' schedule, they have to play the Eagles twice. They haven't gone through the Eagles yet. They have a brutal schedule the rest of the way. There are some winnable games on there. I think that this is probably going to be a 5 or 6 win team at best. And if they're a 5 or 6 win team, let's be honest, if this team finishes with 6 wins, on the outside, you're probably going, that looks terrible. But you have to judge it for the 14 games. If Jaxson Dart goes 6-8 as a starter, but they're 1-possession games and he plays well and they're like a weird play away, then basically you have a good answer. If he's 3-11 down the stretch and looks overwhelmed and overmatched, then you have a big issue with this staff. And look, the Giants, they're all in right now. This is the final play for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen because they have survived a lot in this regime. They have survived some bad decisions. They have survived basically, this was I think their get out of jail free card, because the excuse that was made and the argument was made was this regime never got their quarterback. They were sound with Daniel Jones. They had a great initial success. Many Giant fans even look back at that initial run and that playoff run as a negative because you felt like you had to be stuck with Daniel Jones and Saquon and that team because they made the playoff run, and it maybe have hurt this team's long-term development. But overall, this is a great opportunity for the Giants to work in their young quarterback and make sure that he can work. And we're going to learn a lot about Brian Daboll because Brian Daboll has been touted around this league as an offensive genius, that he is an offensive guru. The one problem I have with that is I've seen Josh Allen not only get better, but play as an MVP or a top 2 quarterback since he left. Now, again, Josh Allen's an incredible quarterback. But I think what's more troubling is the success of Daniel Jones. And I understand that people are going to say, well, he's got better weapons. He's got better situation. Well, okay, but Jaxson Dart now has the same basic weapons that Daniel Jones did last year. I mean, let's be frank. When this season started, 10 of the 11 stars on the offense returned, and the one difference was the quarterback. The big thing for Jaxson Dart is don't put too much on his plate. You have a nice running game with Scatterboo. You can run the football, use play action. You have a great number one receiver that you can scheme open. I think you got to get Theo Johnson more involved as a tight end. Make sure that he can sneak into the underneath so he's a good check down option. But the biggest thing for Jaxson Dart is the offensive line. The offensive line has been my biggest concern with Jaxson Dart. And I've talked to my Giants friends about this. And my opinion is I don't want him to get killed behind an offensive line that is not playing well. And say what you want about Russell Wilson. I understand that Russell Wilson is not playing well, but he's still able to avoid a lot of the pressures. And you watch the film back and you can see he's able to get out of sacks. He's able to outwit opponents because A, of his mobility, but B, because he's played so long in this league, he has a great sense of the pocket. Jaxson Dart, I would advise, especially early, do one or two reads. If they're not open, take off and try to get a couple yards, but slide. Because this offensive line is not a great offensive line. And they've been better than they were last year. But if Andrew Thomas is not able to play a full season, or Andrew Thomas cannot give you significant reps at the left tackle position, if you look at this offensive line and if they are letting Jaxson Dart get hit, because Jaxson Dart is also a smaller quarterback. Like, one thing about Russell Wilson is small, but he is built like a tank. You wonder how much pounding that he can take in that pocket. And I really like Jaxson Dart. I think Jaxson Dart has a great arm. I love the mobility. I love the moxie that he brings, especially as the quarterback. I think that this offense will get a boost with him out on the field. I think there'll be a new energy around him when he takes the field as the starting quarterback. And look, I think this is the time where you have to see what you have. And that's why I think this decision was made. I'm hoping it was made solely by the coaches. A part of me feels like ownership has pushed this decision because they've heard the outcry, they've heard the fans clamoring for it, and they want to see what they got and see what they can get their money's worth. But here's the way I look at it. We have 14 games. We have 14 games to judge this young quarterback to see, can he show enough that he looks like he's trending to be a franchise quarterback? And more importantly, is this the staff that's going to make him work? Because Brian Daboll and Joe Shane have had a lot of excuses. They've had a lot of leeway. They've had the benefit of the doubt that they didn't get to pick a quarterback and develop that quarterback that they wanted. Well, this is their quarterback. This is the one they traded up to in the first round. This is the quarterback they invested in. This is the quarterback that they feel can be a franchise quarterback. And they have to prove it. Brian Daboll's got 14 games. He's got 14 games to prove that not only did they select the right quarterback, but he is the right man to get the most out of this quarterback. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. If you're joining us, you can always check us out wherever podcasts are available. If you always want to take us on the go, because, again, who doesn't love listening to some great sports talk in their pocket? Always check us out. Make sure to join us in the live stream and drop your comments whenever you can. If you drop them after the live stream, I'll try to get to as many comments as I can. And again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. You guys help make this show fantastic and always appreciate the love and support. We'll have plenty of more great content coming to you this week. And if you have ideas for future videos, drop them in the comments. But until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this has been